Afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy days to join us. Excuse me. This is a standard disclaimer that FTA uses per FTA policy. Won't read the whole thing to you. I'll just give you a moment just to scan through this and get an idea of what our disclaimer refers to. Okay. So the goal of today's session is to familiarize NTD reporters with the safety and security reporting requirements and the individual reporting forms that you have access to. As always, we hope that the knowledge you gain today will make your job easier, and we sincerely appreciate your commitment to safety and security reporting. For those of you that report for purchase transportation providers, shown in the system as PT operations, please feel free to share this presentation with them so that they are aware of what you are required to report to NTD, and of course, any changes that have occurred for this year as opposed to previous years. This presentation might also be helpful for those that provide data from other departments or data to your department for reporting in NTD. So today we're going to show you how to access the NTD system and navigate through the various menus and forms. We'll also discuss how setup is achieved within the system and when that's achieved, review the safety package navigation and the various features that are available. We will then go through each of the 4 different reporting, safety and security reporting forms that you see listed here, the SNS 20 CEO certification, which probably a lot of you are familiar with right about this time, the security configuration form, our non-major summary monthly report forms, SNS 50, and of course the SNS 40 major event forms. And then we'll also go through completing a typical collision report. So as Lori mentioned, your hosts today are the safety validation team, which includes me and James Overbeek and Grace Walton. You may know one of us better than the other because each agency is assigned a particular, each analyst, excuse me, is assigned a caseload based on states. So I'm sure some of these names are familiar with you. So we show this data here, and we're also going to show this contact information at the end of the report. So you'll see that again, or at the end of the sessions, excuse me. So you'll see this again if you didn't get a chance to jot down anything. In addition, we also show here the NTD management, Chelsea Champlin, who is our NTD program manager, and Joseph Eldridge, which is our NTD operations center manager as well. So these two are also available for questions. So again, as Lori mentioned, when you are posing your questions, please use the quick Q&A box rather than the chat box so we don't miss your questions. And it's really helpful if you can include the slide number that you might be referring to as well. That way, if we need to return back to that slide, we can easily know which number you're referring to. And we'll, of course, try and answer all of your questions. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Grace and let her kick us off.
Thank you so much, Anne. Hello, everyone. I'm Grace, and I will be handling the rest of this presentation. So first, we will have a brief overview of the NTD program. Then we will discuss the website and show you how to navigate the system. We are changing things up a bit. In the interest of time, we are going to skip over a few slides in this section, and again later for slides pertaining to some non-collision events. This information is important and is included in the presentation that you can download, and I encourage you to review these slides after the presentation. So in 1974, Congress established the National Transit Database, NTD program, as a means to collect information and statistics on the transit systems in the United States. The first data was collected in 1979 via paper reports. Since then, the NTD has evolved into the nation's primary source of information and statistics on transit systems. The data you report is used in a variety of ways. These include, but are not limited to, publicly available data products, which can be used for peer review, the formulation of a national policy, and is used to factor federal funding allocations to transit agencies. How do we validate your data? SNS 4D forms are read by the analyst to compare the event description against data points. In addition, all forms are periodically run through various validation programs looking for common issues. If the analyst has questions or requests corrections, the analyst typically returns the form to the agency, but may also call or email the reporter. Once corrections are made, the analyst re-reviews the form and will approve the submission if applicable. When you make changes to a form, be sure to always submit the form. Failure to report required data can have severe consequences and could affect the agency's annual program funding. A failure to report can be submitted by an analyst to the FTA for a variety of reasons, as you see listed here. This is a screenshot of the National Transit Database homepage on the Federal Transit Administration website. On the left are several links, indicated by the red arrows, that we will discuss in the coming slides. The first of these links is the About the NTD section, which contains an overview of the NTD program and the contact information for technical and non-technical help. The NTD data section provides access to published data products, including safety and security time series files, which is an excellent source for reviewing your agency's statistics and peer comparison to other NTD reporting agencies and the safety and security FAQs. You can also find the current annual data and profiles, monthly ridership statistics, and the National Transit Summaries and Trends, NTST, just to name a few. Under the reference materials, you will find the NTD glossary, policy manuals, quick reference guides, information on training and conferences, and more. Click on either NTD reporting tool or reporting login to log into the NTD program. If you're a new user to the NTD, you will first need to register with login.gov. A link is provided, or you can also just go to the FTA website and search for login.gov. For your NTD login, your business email address will be your login, and you will create a password. Users can change the password as often as they like, but the system does require a new password every 60 days. If a user ID has not been used for 60 days, the system will lock that user ID. If you get locked out, you may try to gain access by clicking on the Reset Password link located beneath where you enter your login. If you gain access, but you do not see your usual access level, you can try on Unlock Request from the Actions menu. Ensure you have answered your security questions or contact the NTD Help Desk, your annual analyst, or your safety analyst for assistance. The agency's user manager establishes a person's user role in the system. The user manager is also the point of contact if you need to have your user role changed. A person must be uniquely identified in only one role. There are several access levels for NTD reporting and safety and security data reporting, as shown here for you to review. It is very important to contact your safety analyst whenever there is a change in the reporter. This way we can contact the new person and ensure they have received training and update our external contact list. To log in, from the NTD homepage, click on the NTD reporting tool. The first screen that appears is shown here on the left. Once you click on Agree to the disclaimer, boxes for you to enter the username and password are presented. The first screen will appear similar to this screenshot. However, you may have different options based on the sites you have access to. On this screen, you can bookmark NTD by clicking the star. Once bookmarked, this screen will only appear if there is a system notice which you must acknowledge. Once you complete the login, this is a snapshot of the default home screen. Notice the menu options in the blue bar across the top, which we discuss more on the next slide. Beneath the FTA logo, you see you have access to the different modules in the NTD: annual, monthly, safety, and profile. The tasks menu shows you how many tasks are in your queue. For example, one of the tasks you may have to do or be pending is an incomplete SNS report. The Reports tab will display reports that are available to you. First, click on the category. In this case, it would be safety. There are two reports you can find helpful here. One is the Historical Lookup Report to review your safety and security data reported in prior years. Another report is the Rate Compared to Industry Rate Report, which will compute and compare your agency incident, injury, and fatality rates against the industry average per 10 million unlinked passenger trips. Inclusion of the reports on this slide makes it easier to access safety and security data within the NTD, though it is still available from the NTD home page as well. The first 3 reports contain detailed data points collected. These will also require creating a view to limit the data to which agency's data you may want to review, identify a period of time, mode, or other data point. There is also a link to instructions for creating a view and downloading data. Under the Action menu option, there are no actions related to safety data reporting, but you may use actions depending on your user role. The bento icon or grid in the upper corner provides internal access to other sites, such as other FTA organizations, the user management module, the SSOR for safety oversight data, and so on. The person icon or picture of the user, if shown, is where you can log out and you can access your Appian profile and system settings. First, we will review safety and security setup. Safety and security packages are automatically generated at the beginning of a new calendar year based on the agency's previous reporting status. Modes and type of service available in the safety module are determined by the agency's P20 form. If you see any unexpected changes to the modes or types of service, or have any questions about the modes or types of services you see, contact the person in your agency who submits the annual reporting data. Please do not attempt to modify the P20 profile, as changes made here can affect all aspects of reporting and may cause data to be deleted. The safety packages give you access to all the safety and security reporting forms. Here's a list of all of the safety forms. We will go into each form's more detail later on. As I mentioned from the Home tab, click on Safety module to view the available safety packages by year. To open a package, click on the blue folder in the agency ID on the left and go to the summary view, or click on the pencil and go right directly to the dashboard for editing. I will click on the folder so you can see the summary view or landing page. So this is the summary view or landing page. This is a screenshot of the safety summary view or landing page. At the top, you will see reporting year, your agency ID number and name. Beneath that is your safety analyst's name and email address, and the safety and security reporting start and end dates, which is the current calendar year. Below that, you see 3 table filtering boxes. The form name filter box is used to limit which forms you see in the form table below. The form status filter to view forms by status, such as returned or approved. And the mode/type of service filter to only a specific mode. You can use as many of these filters as needed. Below the filters is the form table. You can sort by any of the columns by clicking on the column heading. A double click on the column heading will reverse sort it. You can also use web browsers features, the find feature, by doing Control F and entering the number of the major report you wish to locate. However, you must be on the right page to locate it. Remember, you cannot open any of these forms on the safety summary view. To access the forms, you must first click on the NTD Safety Forms button located in the upper right screen. When you click on the NTD Safety Forms button, the dashboard is displayed. It looks similar to the safety summary view, but here you can open existing forms and create major event forms by clicking on File New SNS 40 button. To open an existing form, click the blue form name and the number in the first column. This is the form table, and it can be sorted and filtered just as we discussed in the previous safety summary view. There are no major changes for 2024. However, minor changes have been made to simplify certain reporting elements and address consistency with FTA safety programs. FTA intends to close 2023 safety packages after reports are due and have been validated around April 30th, 2024. Please ensure all of your 2023 data is completed and all questions from validation analysts are answered by that time, as changes may not be possible afterward. updates to the policy manual for the terms transit vehicle rider, other transit staff, and other injury. These are not changes in policy, but in-place guidance has been added to the terms in our manual. The injury threshold now excludes those who are injured solely from exposure to the element, such as a sunburn. On the SNS 50 non-major form, the No Data to Report checkbox has been replaced by 3 sections related no data boxes to improve accuracy in data collection. If the no non-major assaults to report is checked, a prompt will be displayed when you click on submit to prevent the use of this feature by accident for assaults on transit workers, which, as you know, is an important new data collection effective in 2023. We have also added static text at the bottom of the form, again designed to ensure to attesting the correctly completed mode and month data. This and the other confirmation boxes should eliminate instances where an agency may just click on no data to report and submit the form so that they don't receive a late notice. For the other safety occurrences section, we added 2 new locations of platform and parking facility. And we also added a text for when the other location's other category is selected, so that you can report who this non-worker or non-patron/passenger is in that location. And on the SNS 40 forms, I'm sure most of you are already familiar with the new options to complete the geographic coordinates or the approximate address field. That concludes the navigation. Now let's move on to working with each safety and security form. The first we'll discuss is the SNS 20 CEO certification form. The SNS 20 CEO certification form is the CEO's confirmation of the accuracy of the safety and security data for the previous calendar year. This form becomes available on January 15th in the previous year's safety package. The form automatically calculates data from submitted reports for the year. Unsubmitted data is not included. The form is due by the end of February of the following, and only a person logged in as the CEO or CEO delegate user role can submit the form. Late notices are sent directly to the CEO. Data reporters should review their data to ensure it matches the data listed on the SNS 20. Agencies should also use any in-house reports available to help verify the data. Also, the historical lookup report on the Reports tab may be helpful as it shows incident counts by month. If the data does not match, check to ensure that all the safety data reports are submitted. Unsubmitted data is not included. You may add or delete SNS 40s or edit SNS 50 data and the SNS 20 will automatically recalculate the numbers afterward. Remember to always notify your safety analyst if you delete any data. This is a snapshot of the 2023 SNS 20 CEO certification form. Please notice that the CEO name and title shown is a screenshot of our test database, so we do not show any actual data reported by an agency. Notice that the form now includes a row for non-major assaults on transit workers. This concludes the information on the SNS 20 data. Now we will be going over the SNS 30 security configuration form. The SNS security configuration form collects the number and type of security personnel employed or contracted by your agency. The form is completed once a year and at the beginning of the calendar year. It is due by the end of February, and you are required to update and submit this form you are not required to update the form throughout the year if you hire new personnel, etc. You will only submit it one time. All SNS 30s must be completed and submitted to enable reporting. If you cannot create or edit an SNS 40 or 50, it is because one or more SNS 30s is not submitted. All SNS 30 forms should be completed by the end of February, even if you do not submit SNS 50 reports. Those of you who have not completed the SNS 30 will notice that you have the usual box to enter the number of primary security personnel and a new box to enter the number of secondary personnel. The total number of security personnel now calculates the figures based on those two boxes. Below the boxes are 7 selections for identifying the primary and secondary personnel types. The primary security force is one that routinely responds to events and/or is assigned to patrol agency property. The secondary security force is the one or ones occasionally responds when a primary force requires assistance. Please use a count of 0 if you are selecting use of local police, non-contracted selection. The number of personnel is reported in full-time equivalent hours. So 1 full-time equivalent hour equals 1 person working 40 hours a week or 2,080 hours a year. Prorate the number of personnel if the person works only part-time providing transit security or if they provide security for more than one mode. One SNS 30 is completed for each mode. Be careful not to double count personnel. The value in the total number of security personnel from each SNS 30 form should equal the total number of agency security personnel. For example, the DRDO mode has a total number of 0.5, MBPT has a total number of 1.5, and the LRDO mode has a total number of 3. This means the agency's total security force would be 5 full-time equivalent hours. If your security force covers multiple modes, you may use any reasonable method for determining full-time equivalent hours. That may be modal ridership or the number of employees covering a specific mode. If an agency contracts for security and pays a monthly fee based on services used, they should determine full-time equivalent hours based on the previous year's total hours worked. The NTD only allows for 1 primary personnel type. If your agency has more than 1 type of security personnel that it considers its primary, report the secondary force with the largest number of personnel as the primary and the secondary force as secondary. So larger should be your primary, smaller will be listed as your secondary. For further information on the SNS 30, please see the SNS policy manual on the NTD website or feel free to ask your analyst for assistance at any time. Now, let's go ahead and look at non-major reporting on the SNS 50. The definition of a reportable event is a safety or security event occurring on transit right-of-way or infrastructure, at a transit revenue facility, at a maintenance facility, during a transit-related maintenance activity, or involving a transit revenue vehicle that meets non-major thresholds. You see here a short list of thresholds. Fires and assaults both require no injury and any other major event threshold. Fires must be suppressed. Other safety events pertain to single injury events. The respective forms were updated for full reporters at the beginning of April. April 2023 is the effective date for data collection and will be the focus of our validation effort. However, we know some agencies have been preparing for these changes and may have data ready to report prior to April. The FDA welcomes data from prior months, but it is not required. I believe that was mostly for last year, since we are starting this year with everyone reporting SNS 50s. There are some exclusions to the non-major events, which are events occurring at bus stops or shelters that are not on transit-owned property, unless it involves a person boarding or alighting a vehicle. And OSHA events occurring at administrative buildings are excluded. Transport of an individual solely for mental health evaluation unrelated to a specific event due to a person stating they want to harm themselves where there is no evident injury. Those transported solely for intoxication, drug overdose, or exposure to the elements. And finally, injuries from collisions, even what you may call a minor collision or any other reportable major event. Non-major data collection will include a count of the monthly assaults on transit workers that did not result in an injury. Any assault that results in an injury will continue to be reported as a major event on the SNS 40 form. Other safety occurrences must meet single injury only thresholds and are related to falls, electric shocks, smoke, etc. If the safety event results in multiple injuries, that again will bump it up to a major event report, which should be reported as an SNS 50. The SNS 50 form also collects the number of non-major fires where there was no evacuation, injuries, or fatalities, or property damage, but still required suppression. There are a couple of key terms and their respective definitions to become familiar with. Understanding these definitions will help you to determine what assaults on transit workers you need to include on the SNS 50 form. The first is transit worker. This new definition was made to specifically include volunteers as workers. The existing definition of a transit employee, however, includes that the worker is one that is compensated by the transit agency. The second is assault on a transit worker. NTD is adopting the statutory definition of an assault on a transit worker, which is a circumstance in which an individual knowingly, without lawful authority or permission, and with intent to endanger the safety of any individual or with a reckless disregard for the safety of human life, interferes with, disables, or incapacitates a transit worker while the transit worker is performing the duties of the transit worker. FTA is not tasked to determine if your event is reportable. Note that the thresholds in bold: intent to endanger the safety of any individual or with reckless disregard for the safety of human life to determine if the event is reportable. In the non-major transit workers assault section, you'll record the number of non-injury worker assaults that occurred during the reporting month, which will include the location of the assault and the type of worker that was assaulted. As you can see, there are two types of workers: vehicle operators and other transit workers. This is a new definition based on the requirements of the BIL. These definitions may also be found in the NTD glossary. There are two terms used to collect the assault type. These terms classifies the assault as physical or non-physical. In a physical assault, the assailant makes physical contact with the worker by body, by an object, weapon, or any projectile. Projectiles may include, but are not limited to, bullets, any liquid, saliva, or any substance. In non-physical assaults, there is no physical contact with the worker. Non-physical assaults could include verbal threats, harassment, or interference with a worker's duty. The form also provides an additional details text box to provide additional information about one or more of the assaults. A description is not required, but it may be helpful, for example, for identifying risk factors or other pertinent information. A final note about the SNS 50 assault collection: do not use this to report all of your assaults, meaning do not combine your major assaults in this table with non-major assaults. In the first scenario, you see a passenger sitting on a bus who refuses to pay the fare and spits on the operator. The operator denies transport. This will be reported as a physical assault on an operator on the SNS 50. The second scenario, the passenger's refusal to exit the bus so the doors may close, prompts the operator to leave their seat and approach the passenger. This interferes with the operator's duty to drive the vehicle. Report the assault on report a non-major, not physical assault on a transit worker. On the form, enter the number of safety occurrences and matching number of injured parties. Remember that injured means that the person was transported away from the scene for medical attention. Do not include people who were not transported away from the scene for medical attention. Here are several examples of injuries reported on the SNS 50. A passenger thrown out of the seat due to a hard brake, improper wheelchair securement, and the rider is injured, transit vehicle door closing on an arm, leg, backpack, or clothing, a person walks or bumps into a non-moving transit vehicle. Again, non-major fires are ones that do need to be suppressed but do not meet any other major event threshold. And non-rail mode should never report a fire on the right-of-way, as this only refers to rail modes. Two of the categories for injuries on the SNS 50 form relate to securement issues. Securement issues are those related to an injury resulting from improper securement of a mobility device, such as a wheelchair or a scooter. So they are reported as other in-vehicle securement issue. The other category is for other in-vehicle, not a securement issue. These are trips, slips, falls, while on the vehicle or from being thrown from a seat during a vehicle maneuver. This is a snapshot of the top portion of the SNS 50 form. SNS 50 monthly summary report form captures monthly count of assaults on transit workers, non-major fires, and other safety incidents or occurrences. The rail and non-rail versions are slightly different. You will notice that the form No Data Report checkbox has been removed, and it is now replaced by a section-specific No Data to Report checkboxes indicated with these red arrows. Here we have the second portion of the SNS 50 form, including the new static message at the bottom. If the No Non-Major Assaults to Report is selected, when you click Submit, a warning message will display as indicated here, and by checking this box, you are confirming, in short, that a failure to submit a completed and timely SNS 50 forms may be considered a failure to report as defined in Title 49 CFR Part 636. The user must check OK to continue and to submit the form. Complete and submit one form for each mode/type of service monthly. If no qualifying safety events occurred in the month and mode, open the appropriate SNS form and choose the check boxes adjacent to No Data to Report, then save and submit the form. The SNS 50 is completed regardless of any major event occurring. Please do not submit prior to the end of the reporting month. The form must show a submit date after the last day of the month. The SNS 30 and SNS 50 forms can be modified at any time. Some reporters like to enter events as they occur during the month. For these reporters, they can modify the form and save and close the form after each change. Your validation analyst reviews each report for accuracy. If we have any questions, we may return the report to you, call, or email with our concern. If the return feature is used, the user login listed under the last modified user column will receive the email. Editing SNS 40 forms will be reviewed at the end of this section. Now I will turn the next part of this presentation over to James.
Thanks, Grace. We will now take a look at major event reporting. Applicability is the same as for the SNS 50, but let's do this in more detail. A reportable event is a safety or security event occurring on transit right-of-way or infrastructure, at a transit revenue facility, at a maintenance facility or yard, during a transit-related maintenance activity, or involving a transit revenue vehicle and meets a reporting threshold. SNS 40 reports are due no later than 30 days from the date of the event. Please make every effort to report in a timely manner. There are some exclusions to the applicability, such as events that occur off transit property where persons, vehicles, or objects come to rest on transit property after the event, OSHA events in administration buildings, death from illness, drug overdose, or natural causes, including those found deceased, other events such as assault, robberies, non-transit vehicle collisions occurring at bus stops or shelters not on transit-owned property, unless it involves a person boarding or alighting, or involving a transit revenue vehicle, and non-revenue service vehicle, supervisor or police vehicle collisions that occur while traveling to or from a transit-related maintenance activity while operating on public roads. Fatality, including suicides, are confirmed within 30 days. One or more persons immediately transported for medical attention, which is their injury. Property damage equal to or exceeding $25,000. Evacuations of a transit facility or vehicle for life safety reasons. A collision involving a transit roadway revenue vehicle, which results in either the transit roadway vehicle or a non-transit roadway vehicle being towed away from the scene regardless of severity of damage. Here are a few examples of events that are reportable to NTD. Two people who are still standing when the transit vehicle starts moving fall and are injured. If a deadheading or out of service vehicle is involved in a collision, or there's a fire in a bus garage meeting a reportable threshold, these are reportable. Maintenance-related activities are included in reporting. Here you see a few examples of maintenance-related activities that are reportable. A mechanic falls into the pit, resulting in a fatality. Maintenance employee hit by a vehicle in the yard and is injured. Less severe injuries to maintenance workers are captured on the SNS 50 monthly summary report, along with non-major injuries to passengers and patrons. Now we have some examples of events that are not reportable. An employee injured on a city street or other property that is not transit-owned property. A person is waiting at a bus stop and is hit by a car is not reportable since the person was not on transit-controlled property. An assault or robbery that occurs if the person is boarding, alighting at the time. You will remember that part of the event definition states involving a transit revenue vehicle. However, NTD also collects non-transit collision incidents, such as an accident in transit parking lots that meets a threshold. A few examples are: if a private vehicle collides with a pedestrian or vehicle requiring immediate transport for medical treatment, private vehicle collides with transit property such as a station, resulting in total damage of $25,000 or more, or any other threshold. Fatalities. A fatality is a death confirmed within 30 days of a transit-related event. This includes transit-related suicides. Please do not include deaths resulting from illness, drug overdoses, or natural causes, including found deceased on transit property where it is not a result of a collision or suicide. The next threshold is injuries. An injured person is a person transported immediately away from the scene for medical attention. This includes transport by ambulance, private vehicle, or any other means. There are a number of exclusions to include, including a person walking away from the scene for medical attention is not considered injured. Medical attention must be sought without delay after the event. Medical attention must be administered at a location other than where the event occurred, meaning that minor first aid given at the scene is not considered an injury. Here are a few more exclusions. Medical attention due to illnesses should not be reported. For example, a passenger on the bus has a seizure and is transported to the hospital. Also, the exclusions regarding mental health evaluations, declarations of self-harm, transport solely for intoxication, overdoses, or exposure to the elements, just as we mentioned in the SNS 50 section. Now we'll talk about the property damage threshold. Events with total actual or estimated property damage equal to or exceeding $25,000 are reportable. Property damage includes transit vehicle and non-transit vehicle damage, damage to transit stations, bus stop signs, and shelters if applicable. The cost of non-transit property, private property, examples are buildings, fences, etc., are included, and also cost of clearing wreckage. NTD requires only general or ballpark estimates, and you may use a variety of methods for estimating. A few examples are Blue Book values, repair amounts or insurance estimates, established standard property damage estimates for specific event types or severity of damage. Many transit agencies create a list of standardized costs, or these estimates may be done on a case-by-case basis. Estimated damage excludes personal property such as laptops, cell phones, investigation costs, medical claims, or litigation. Property damage must always be reported on the SNS 40, regardless of amount, including zero damage. If the cost is confirmed as zero, enter a statement in the event description. Otherwise, the analyst will return the report requesting such a statement. If there is a collision involving a transit roadway revenue vehicle, which results in either the transit revenue vehicle or non-transit vehicle being towed, the event is automatically reportable, regardless of any other threshold. This is limited to roadway vehicles and therefore excludes ferry boats and trains. For example, a transit bus and a car collide. There are no injuries or fatalities, and property damage is only $1,000. But the car is towed from the scene due to disabling damage. This event is reportable. The towaway is not based on the severity of damage. All evacuations for life safety reasons are reportable. Life safety means there's imminent danger to people in that environment. This includes both directed or customer self-evacuations. Self-evacuations are where customers vacate the property without direction of the transit agency or other authority. Some examples of a life safety reasons are suspicious packages, bomb threats, a smoke event, fire, fuel fumes, noxious odors, or a person with a weapon on a transit vehicle. If a bus has a transmission problem and passengers are evacuated to the sidewalk or shoulder, the transmission problem is not a potential unsafe situation and therefore is not reportable. Evacuations are not common for collisions. There would need to be a fuel leak or some similar life safety situation. Here's a little reminder on how to generate a new SNS 40 report. First, you'll navigate to the Home menu option. Then choose Safety and choose the appropriate calendar year and click on the folder on the left. Unlike the SNS 50 form, the SNS 40 is not automatically generated, and if you only create an SNS 40 if there is a reportable event. To create the form, click on the NTD Safety Forms button located in the upper right corner to access the dashboard. To add a new report, you'll just click on the File New SNS 40 button. Just a reminder that SNS 40 reports are due no later than 30 days after the date of the event. If you have an event to report that includes 2 or more transit modes from your agency, how do you choose which mode to report under? If the event involved your rail mode and a non-rail mode, choose rail. For example, one of your light rail vehicles and one of your buses collide. Report the incident only once under the light rail mode. If the event is between 2 non-rail modes, use the predominant use rule, which is typically based on ridership. For example, if a bus and a paratransit vehicle collide, report the event under the bus mode since it has higher ridership. The first 2 screens will act as a wizard to help determine if the events meet the thresholds. Screen 1 captures the date of the event, the mode and type of service, and the event type. Here's a snapshot of setup screen 1. Setup screen 1 event types. The first and most common is a collision, followed by fires, hazmat spills, acts of nature, and other safety events that meet a threshold, such as smoke events, fumes, some slips and falls, etc. Each of these will be discussed in more detail later in the presentation. There are 2 categories of security events. They are system security events such as arson, bomb threats, suspicious packages, etc. Basically, they are events that affect the transit system as a whole. The second type is a personal security event, such as assault, robbery, homicide, rape, etc., that affect 1 or more persons. The second setup screen asks you a series of questions, some of which are based on the mode and/or the type of event you're reporting. This is to determine the reportability of the event and the subforms that need to be generated. This is only a list that we will cover each in more detail. First is the number of injuries and/or fatalities, the total estimated property damage amount. The screen asks about an evacuation threshold question. If the event type is a collision, then you are also asked the tow-away threshold question. You will also be asked if transit revenue vehicles were involved, which determines if this is a transit or non-transit collision. This is a snapshot of setup screen 2 for non-rail mode collisions. As I mentioned, if you chose collision on screen 1, then screen 2 captures if there were transit revenue vehicles involved in this event. Select yes if this is true, which includes purchase transportation, or PT, vehicles as a transit vehicle since you are reporting for this service. You would select no when the collision involves a private vehicle on transit property or a transit non-revenue vehicle collision that occurs on transit property. These are typically maintenance vehicle collisions that meet a threshold. Based on the selection you have made and questions you have answered, the system will respond accordingly. If the event is reportable as a major event, the basic information screen will appear. If the event is not reportable as a major event, the system will generate a message that the event is not reportable and ask you if you want to continue. At this point, you can edit the selections on setup screen 2 in case you answered a question incorrectly, which may have made the event seem not reportable. If the event meets the criteria for a major event, the basic information screen will appear next. The basic information screen displays the date you already selected. Enter the time of the event. I'm sure most of you are already familiar with the new options to complete the geographic coordinates or the approximate address. If you click on Search by Address, enter the full address in the approximate address field, and the system will find the latitude and longitude for you. Or you can click on Search by Latitude and Longitude, then enter the geographic coordinates in the appropriate boxes, and the system will complete the approximate address field. In this case, be sure to enter the coordinates as indicated in the last bullet. We use Google Maps to verify the information in these fields. The basic information screen also captures the event description. The description box can hold 2,000 characters. If you exceed the 2,000 character limit, a message will pop up that you exceeded the limit, and you will not be able to continue to the next screen until you reduce the number of characters. The description should be concise but descriptive so that the analyst can understand what occurred, how it occurred, and it should include the number and type of injuries or fatalities, and if any vehicle was towed. Also, please refrain from using Vehicle 1 or Vehicle 2 or codes such as IV to refer to a vehicle. The analyst has to be able to determine who hit whom and how, and not all reporters refer to Vehicle 1 or IV as the transit vehicle. Here's an example of an event description. You may have noticed the event description did not include any personally identifiable information such as names, addresses, badge or driver's license numbers, and so on. However, do continue to include ages and genders of your injuries, as this helps us validate your report. The basic information screen now includes attempted suicide and suicide checkboxes when the event type is a collision. This is corroborated by the same checkbox on the injury or fatality form. The last piece of information is the name and phone number of someone to contact for additional information regarding the event. You do not need to enter the name of the person if they are the person reporting the event. When you enter a phone number, enter only the numbers and no parentheses or dots. The field will self-format. The basic information screen is also the first screen that the progress bar appears on. This bar shows you how many subsections you have to complete and your progress thus far. This is a snapshot of the basic information screen. You'll see the progress bar at the top of the form, and in this case shows that we're on the basic information. Before we start reviewing the details of reporting a collision, you may recall that I mentioned one of the big changes is in reporting an assault that results in a collision with a transit vehicle as a collision event. This is effective in 2023 and forward and aligns with reporting attempted suicide and suicide by transit vehicle. These will no longer be reported as an assault on the security form. When we get to the injury and fatality forms, you will see how you indicate the assault if an injury or homicide if a fatality. The collision screens will vary slightly depending on selection on setup screen 2. Typically, there are 4 screens or subforms that may appear when reporting a transit collision. The collision event information screen, the collision information screen, the transit vehicle involved information screen, and if applicable, the other vehicle involved information screen will appear. This is a snapshot of the collision event screen for non-rail modes. So the first collision screen is the collision event information screen. For all the modes, this captures information about the number of transit vehicles involved. The answer would always be 1 unless 2 transit vehicles from your agency collide. The location of the event, such as the transit station, roadway intersection, roadway grade crossing, bus or service stop, non-revenue facility, which would be a transit bus barn, yard, or maintenance facility, etc. Bus or service stop is appropriate location for modes such as demand response, which is paratransit, pickup at a person's home. Continuing on with locations, ramps, streets, highways, and freeways are reported as roadway, not a grade crossing or intersection. Please do not select other and type in highway or freeway. Other is used for parking or private property. Grade crossings are locations where rail tracks and vehicular traffic intersect. Parking lot entrances, exits, and driveways are not reported as intersections. Use the roadway, not grade crossing or intersection location. For the collision with selection, indicate what the transit vehicle collided with, such as another vehicle, person, animal, fixed object, and so on. A collision with a bicyclist, pedicab, a person in a wheelchair, or on an electric scooter is reported as a collision with a person. Larger scooters, like a small motorcycle, mopeds, and motorcycles, school buses, or dump trucks are all reported as a collision with motor vehicle. Use the other selection only when no other selection is appropriate. In a multiple impact collision scenario, report the collision with as the first object impacted. For example, a bus collides with a car and then the car hits a building. The collision with selection would be motor vehicle, and you would include the damages to the building and that the building was struck in the event description. The last selection is the number of other non-transit vehicles that were involved in the collision. Please note, this box is not the total number of vehicles in the collision. It is only the number of non-transit vehicles involved. So please do not include the number of transit vehicles in this number. We'll look at a few examples of how to determine how many other motor vehicles to report. If car 1 cuts off a bus, but no contact is made, and the bus goes on to hit car 2, the total number of other vehicles to report is 1, because only car 2 had contact with the bus. Another example is if car 1 hits a car 2, then car 2 hits the bus. The number of other vehicles to report is 2. Again, both car 1 and car 2 made contact. NTD also collects non-transit collisions, such as an accident in transit parking lots or with transit property. The event must meet a reportable threshold. Here are a few examples you can read through. For the number of other vehicles selection, enter the total number of non-revenue or private vehicles involved. The non-transit collision form will appear when you select the collision event type on setup screen 1 and select no to the question, were transit revenue vehicles involved in this collision on setup screen 2. After the collision event information screen, the next screen to appear is the collision information screen shown here. Earlier I mentioned that we separated the intersection/grade crossing selection into an intersection selection and a grade crossing selection. You will notice that for the form that the form still includes intersection/grade crossing, but you can no longer select it. It had to be kept due to the mid-year launch and for historical data. The collision information screen captures information about the conditions at the scene. The collision information screen captures such as the weather and lighting conditions at the time of the collision. The twilight selection is used to refer to both dawn and dusk when it is not full light or full dark out. Please be sure your lighting corroborates the AM/PM time you entered on the basic information screen. As a reminder, indoors is not used to indicate street lights or lights at a station platform. The condition of the roadway is also collected, such as wet, dry, icy, etc. Here are some considerations when reporting the roadway configuration. You would select limited access highway to report an accident or an incident on the freeway. A limited access highway has access limited in some way. For example, it may not allow pedestrians or bicycles. If you choose either roadway intersection or roadway grade crossing on the collision event information screen, the appropriate selection will default on this collision information form. Also, you may have noticed that now, when the location is intersection, that only intersection control device selections appear, or if you select the grade crossing as the location, only grade crossing controls appear. You no longer have to select not applicable of the inappropriate list. At this point, we have completed the collision event information screen. The next screen to be presented collects information about transit vehicles involved. One screen will appear for each transit vehicle involved. The form includes an identifier count and buttons for increasing or decreasing the number of vehicles. This is a screenshot of the transit vehicle involved screen for non-rail collision reporting. This form now has a tooltop adjacent to the collision type field, which will show the image shown on slide 106 coming up. The form captures the vehicle type, information about the type and manufacturer of the revenue vehicle involved, the vehicle action at the time of the collision. The collision type is captured for all modes. This is the part of the transit vehicle that was impacted. the speed at the time of the collision, and a question asking if the vehicle was towed due to disabling damage. The Fleet Involved section integrates with your agency's most current A30 revenue vehicle inventory form. There are separate A30 forms for each mode and type of service. With this integration, you will choose a vehicle from the list of available options. When the selection is made, the vehicle and fuel types are already part of the selection, thus eliminating making any incorrect selection. If you are operating a new manufacturer that is not in the A30, you will have an option to add the vehicle into the form. However, adding a vehicle to the collision form does not update the A30 form itself. If you have questions about an A30, please contact the person at your agency who completes the form. This is a screenshot after clicking on the existing fleet button. The grid displays the available options from your A30 for the mode you are reporting, with columns representing pertinent data. Some agencies may have many selections, so you can use one of the 4 filter boxes to reduce the grid to show only certain ID numbers, certain vehicle types, or vehicle manufacturers. To select a vehicle from the fleet, click on the checkbox located to the left of the option. Then you will click on the Add Fleet button at the bottom. Once the selection is added, the total vehicles and active fleet vehicle columns shown here will disappear, and the agency fleet ID will disappear, which would be more beneficial as part of the record and for reporters for vehicle identification. If the vehicle is not listed with the existing fleet, the user may add a new vehicle by clicking on the New Fleet button. The grid will display drop-down boxes to select a vehicle type, vehicle manufacturer, and vehicle fuel type. These are lists of all possible options, unrestricted to the agency's A30. After making your selections, click on Add Fleet. This is a screenshot after clicking on the Add Fleet. If you need to make a correction, click on the red X under the Remove column heading and start over. We'll now explore some of the transit vehicle action options. When the transit vehicle is moving into or out of a scheduled service stop, report the action as either making a transit stop or leaving a transit stop accordingly, and report the transit vehicle speed to indicate the vehicle was moving. Do not choose this option if the vehicle was not moving. If you choose the stop or parked option, be sure to report the vehicle speed as 0. The vehicle speed must be reported even if it is 0. This diagram shows most of the impact points which are reported from the point of view of the transit vehicle. This image will now display if you choose the tooltip adjacent to the collision type field. We'll look at the options in more detail. Other front impact is used when the front of the transit vehicle is impacted, but not when it would be considered head-on or rear-ending. An example would be the front corner bumper hits another vehicle or object while turning, not the bumper on the side at the front. Likewise, other rear impact is used when the transit vehicle is impacted on the rear, but not when it would be considered rear-ended. An example would be if the transit vehicle was backing up and hit a utility pole. Rear-ending and rear-ended must be reported as a pair. If the transit vehicle hits the rear end of a vehicle, the transit vehicle collision type is reported as rear-ending, and the collision type for the vehicle that was struck in the rear is reported as rear-ended. Don't use either of these terms if using along with other front or other rear impact unless there are more than two vehicles involved. Side impact means that the transit vehicle was impacted anywhere on its side, including the door, the mirror, or the tires, with the exception of when a side swipe occurs. Side swipe is used when two vehicles are parallel to each other, going in either the same or opposite directions, and bump and scrape along the sides of each other. Both vehicles would be reported as side swipe. Please note that side swipe cannot be the action chosen when you are reporting a collision with a person. Instead, use side impact. When reporting a T-bone or broadside collision, one vehicle is reported as head-on and the other vehicle is reported as side impact. So, in the diagram, vehicle number 1, the other motor vehicle, would be reported as head-on, and the transit vehicle, number 2, would be reported as side impact. Multiple vehicle accidents or chain reaction accidents can be a challenge to report. Remember to consider the first impact or collision type in your analysis. In this diagram, vehicle 1 would be reported as rear-ending. It's doing the hitting, which means that vehicle 2 was rear-ended, which then caused vehicle 2 to be pushed into vehicle 3, the transit vehicle, which would also be reported as rear-ended. For the speed, enter the actual speed of the transit vehicle at the time of the collision. If the speed is unknown, you can use the posted speed for that section of the road, and if needed, adjust that speed based on traffic and/or road conditions at the time of the incident. The last selection on the form is, was this vehicle towed from the scene due to disabling damage incurred as a result of the collision? You will answer yes or no accordingly. If you indicated on the collision event screen that another vehicle was involved, the other vehicle information screen will appear. This screen gathers information about non-transit vehicles or vehicles involved in the collision. If more than one other vehicle is involved, you will need to complete one other vehicle involved information form for each motor vehicle involved. Vehicle counts are included on the forms as well as options to add or remove vehicles. This is a screenshot of the other vehicle involved screen for non-rail collision reporting. This form now has a tooltip adjacent to the collision type field, which will show the image shown on slide 106. The form collects the type of other vehicle. The form includes an option for a non-revenue rail vehicle. The automobile option would be used for both cars and passenger vans like a Dodge Caravan, for example. The action or physical movement of the other vehicle at the time of the collision is also collected. Just as when reporting the transit vehicle collision type, you are indicating the part of the vehicle that was hit from the point of view of the other vehicle. The form includes the question, was this vehicle towed from the scene due to disabling damage incurred as a result of the collision? You'll answer yes or no accordingly. Please select no if the vehicle was towed because the operator was taken away or just wanted it towed. It must be due to disabling damage, even though that may only be a flat tire. This concludes the collision information screen. If your event includes an injury or fatality, you will need to complete a screen for each person. This form also includes a person count and buttons for increasing or decreasing the number of people. Person type location categories are divided into two groups: person outside the vehicle and persons inside the vehicle. Transit vehicle rider is the correct choice for passengers boarding or alighting. For collisions, the injury and fatality forms, the attempted suicide and respective suicide checkboxes have been modified into 3 radio button options pertaining to attempted suicide or suicide, assault and homicide, and for no attempt of assault or homicide accordingly. Note the injury and fatality forms for non-collision events remain as is. Make an appropriate selection and ensure selection is corroborated in the event description by third-party accounts, police reports, CCTV, etc. For example, if a person is intentionally pushed in front of the train and is thereby assaulted, and the train strikes the person, you would choose assault on the injury form or homicide on the fatality form accordingly. Similarly, the trespasser checkbox has been modified into 3 radio buttons pertaining to trespassers. Selections for trespasser, not a trespasser, and insufficient information. A trespasser selection is required. The insufficient information is to be used only when there is no corroborating data to confirm this was intentional, and again, should be addressed in the event description. Trespassers are people in unauthorized areas, typically in facilities. Just as with attempted suicide, if there are police reports, eyewitness statements, etc., to account for trespassing, please include that information in the event description. Using the word trespasser or trespassing is very helpful to the analyst. This is a snapshot of the fatality form. Notice the operator can be either inside or outside of vehicles. This is a very common mistake for someone to choose the operator option from outside the vehicle during a vehicle collision. This is a snapshot of the injury form. As you can see, transit vehicle operator is in the outside vehicles and in the person inside vehicles. This will conclude the reporting of collisions, injuries, and fatalities. I will now pass it back to Grace.
Thank you so much, James. Let's look at non-collision reporting. Earlier, we discussed evacuations. Evacuations can be included in any event type, but are less common in collisions. If an evacuation is incorrectly included or excluded, you cannot add or delete it in a reporting form. The entire report will need to be deleted and a new report entered with or without the evacuation. The evacuation subform includes a verification question to confirm the evacuation was for a life safety or potentially life safety condition. Please do not answer no to the evacuation question. If the evacuation is not for life safety, then delete the report and create a new one by answering no to the evacuation question on setup screen 2. This is a screenshot of the evacuation subform that you will see when creating an evacuation event. In the evacuation detail section, you can include a brief description of the evacuation, including the cause. The "what was evacuated" question is used to indicate what was actually evacuated. One choice would be vehicle/vessel, which would refer to the bus or ferry or whichever transit vehicle you are referring to. And the last question asks if this was a self-evacuation. For example, self-evacuation is when passengers get off the transit vehicle without being told explicitly to depart. Reporting fires on the SNS 40 must meet one or more major event threshold. To be defined as a fire, the incident must have had fire suppression equipment or personnel involved to contain the fire and must meet a major event threshold. Without the thresholds in a fire requiring suppression, it is reported on the monthly S&S 50 non-major summary report. Arson is reported on screen 1 as a system security event, not a fire. The presence of smoke, no fire, and no suppression is reported as an other safety event. A screenshot of the fire event details section screen. If the fire is in or on the vehicle, including in the engine, wheel area, or anywhere on the outside of the vehicle, it would be reported as in or on vehicle. Report the type or cause of the fire. For the fuel type selection, if you chose the location of the fire as in or on vehicle, you would also report the fuel type of the vehicle. Acts of God are natural and unavoidable catastrophes that affect the transit environment. Select all locations of property damage, injuries/fatalities, and evacuations. You would be able to choose more than one option. For example, the location should indicate the property or properties that were damaged and not the geographic location, such as the name of the city. This is a screenshot of the Act of God screen. When reporting hazardous material spills, the spill must meet reportable thresholds and have caused imminent danger to life, health, or environment, and required specialized cleanup. A couple of examples of what is not reportable as a hazmat event: oil, brake fluid, etc. from a transit vehicle. A bleach container carried onto a vehicle breaks open and the vehicle is evacuated due to fumes. This event will be reported as an other safety event because there was no specialized cleanup used. This is a screenshot of the hazardous material spill screen. You report the location of the spill and the type of material that is spilled. There are two categories of security incidences on screen 1. System security or personal security events, which must meet one or more of the following thresholds. System security events occur on transit property and affect the transit system as a whole. Personal security events happen to individuals on transit property or those boarding/alighting a transit vehicle. This is where you would report suicides or attempted suicides that did not involve an impact with a transit vehicle. Now let's talk about the assault on transit workers. As you know, we have been collecting assaults on workers when there have been an injury for many years. However, ever since April 2023, we now have two new terms and definitions to learn. The first is for transit worker. This new definition was made to specifically include volunteers rather than using the existing definition of a transit employee, which reads the worker is one compensated by the transit agency. The second definition is for assaults on transit workers. As we discussed earlier, the NTD is adopting the statutory definition from the FRN as a circumstance in which an individual knowingly, without lawful authority or permission, and with the intent to endanger or the safety of any individual, or with a reckless disregard for the safety of human life, interferes with, disables, or incapacitates a transit worker while the transit worker is performing the duties of the transit worker. The assault on transit worker definition is now more defined than the assault definition in the next row. The term assault now applies to only non-worker assaults. The assault definition incurred a slight revision, the definition to ensure consistency with the definition of an assault on a transit worker. The homicide definition is unchanged. Homicide is relative to assault in that any assault resulting in a fatality is reported on the NTD as a homicide event. We will collect the same information and use the same forms for both assault and homicide. Again, there are two terms used to collect assault types. These terms classifies the assault as a physical or a non-physical assault. In a physical assault, the assailant makes contact with the worker or may use an object, weapon, or projectile to do so. Projectiles may include, but are not limited to, bullets, any liquid, the assailant's saliva, or any substance. In non-physical assaults, there is no physical contact with the worker. Non-physical assaults could be verbal threats, harassment, or interference with a worker's duties. If either assault or homicide is selected as the event type, then a subsection will appear for additional information on who was assaulted or killed. The first two selections are for operators and workers. The last section, assault/homicide not against a transit worker, would be used to report assaults against passengers or patrons. Another subsection will appear if assault/homicide against operator or assault/homicide against other transit worker is selected to collect this act as a physical or a non-physical assault event. To assist in reporting or determining how to report, we are providing several examples. In the first, a passenger boards a bus and refuses to pay the fare. He becomes nasty and spits on the operator. The operator requests EMS and is transported for medical attention. Report an assault on a transit worker and indicate it was a physical assault and include one injury. In the second scenario is one that we see often. Two police officers are assaulted during an arrest. Both officers are transported for medical attention. Report an assault on a transit worker and indicate it was a physical assault and include two injuries. In the third scenario, we have an event where a transit worker and a patron were both assaulted. However, only the patron was transported. So far in this presentation, we have learned that if the operator is not transported, the event is reported as a non-major event. However, the assault on the patron is also a reportable event. This one event cannot be split up as two separate events. Therefore, one major report is created as an assault on a transit worker, and the injury included represents just the patron who was transported. This is a screenshot of the System Security Event screen. You may notice there is an Other System Security Event option on this form. This would be to capture security events that do not meet any other category. For example, shots being fired at or objects thrown at a specific vehicle. This is a screenshot of the Personal Security Event form. You will notice there is an Other Personal Security Event option on this form as well. The same general idea applies to that selection. This is a screenshot of both the subsections of the assault/homicide and the assault/homicide against a transit worker. The final major event type is Other Safety Events. This is your miscellaneous category. These events must meet one or more of the following thresholds: one or more fatalities, two or more injured, property damage of $25,000 or greater, or an evacuation. Please note that you may report an other safety event with one injury if another threshold is met. For example, if you have property damage greater than $25,000 and only one injury, it is still reportable. Here are some examples. An evacuation of transit property due to smoke, fumes, and noxious odors. Any fatality on transit property that is not considered a collision or a suicide. So this would be falls, electrocutions, etc. Two people thrown from their seats on a bus due to a hard brake and are transported. 3 people injured when an escalator comes to an abrupt stop. And other safety events resulting in only a single injury must be reported on the SNS 50 monthly summary form. This is a screenshot of the Other Safety Events screen. At this point, we have completed all of our screens for the reportable event types. Woo! Now let's review saving, submitting, and editing. At any point from the basic information screen on, the system automatically saves your report. So if you close the report without saving or submitting from this point on, these auto-saved reports become pending reports, which are stored as a task on the task menu option. When you are ready to complete the report, click on the task menu option and you will see a listing of each task. Major event report tasks will appear with SNS 40 in the title. Just click on the task and the system will return you to the screen you were on when you closed the report. Complete the report and save and submit, Or if you no longer need the report, you can choose to delete it instead. Save and submit options appear when you are in the view form mode. If you do not see a save or submit button, click on the view form button and scroll to the bottom. Once you click on save, the report is saved and it is given an event number at the top of the report. The report stays open so that you can review it. When you submit a report, the report will close the report and return you to the dashboard. Submitting the report releases the report to the validation analyst for review and comment. It also notifies the analyst by email that a report has been created or edited. Please note that unsubmitted reports are excluded from the event, injury, and fatality accounts on your SNS 20 CEO certification form. Analysts may return reports for questions or if you need to make corrections. The system will send the last modified user one email for each report that is returned. After you make corrections, be sure to save and resubmit it again. When reviewing or editing your reports, it's important to learn how to move around the document. Here is a list of available button tools, though each button may not be available on every single form. One shortcut I would like to point out is the Jump to section button. This button allows you to jump to specific screens instead of using the next or back buttons. Both the SNS policy manual and the NTD FAQ page have been updated to include information about assaults on transit workers. There is also a FAQ for the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan Final Rule. There are several resources available for further information on assaults on transit workers. These resources are continued on the next slide and include guidance for NTD reporting, as well as an informational presentation by TSO, which covers assaults on transit workers initiatives and how NTD data collection ties into tracking programs towards the risk reduction program. So that concludes our presentation. I am going to loop back to Anne, who would like to clarify something real quick on page 55, so I will turn that over. However, to kind of conclude this, if you're unsure of who to contact, you can reach out to any of your safety analysts listed here. We're also going to address any last-minute questions that may not have been answered, but I will turn it over to Anne now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Grace. Excuse me. And thank you for the questions. I see we've had lots, and we always like to have lots of questions because we like to be perfectly clear to everyone. I mean, that is the objective of our training, of course. So there was a question. Let me see if I can go back to that question. I believe I left it there about slide 55. And I appreciate what you were pointing out there. I think there was some confusion between what we said on slide 54 and what we said on slide 55. So I just wanted to kind of retouch on that. Yeah, so on slide 55, I was trying to see if we needed to go back to 54, but I don't think we do. So on slide 55, I believe the question was, or the confusion was, we said that, I thought they said that no data to report box was replaced with the no non-major boxes. And I clarified that to say that it used to be that there was just a single no data to report checkbox, and it referred to the entire form, all of the sections. When we added the assault section, a little bit after we added the assault section, we wanted to clarify so that no data to report was not a universal for all of the sections, especially for the assault section, because we do want to make sure that we're capturing that data. So this was changed to have 3 no data to report sections. I think where the confusion could have come in what we actually said. And I'll take the blame for that because I wrote this out as to what we were to say. So I actually mentioned in the text, I said, choose the checkbox adjacent to no data to report, then save and submit, when what Grace would have said, if I had written this correctly, is to choose the appropriate checkbox adjacent to the various no data to report selections. So just wanted to clarify that we are talking about 3 checkboxes there, one for assaults, one for safety injuries, safety related injuries, excuse me, and then one for the non-major fires. So again, we will correct the what we say there in to prevent further confusion on that and future confusion on that. All right, do we have any other questions that need to be answered in the box? Let me see. First link on the resources page. Are you referring to the NTD homepage, Eric? I don't know if you can answer yes or no there. Oh, or maybe you mean in the training presentation at the end there. Oops, where'd it go? I don't see the presentation.
No, it's gone.
Okay.
Page
Well-
148 of the presentation.
Well, Eric, oh, page
James or
148.
Grace, whoever.
I
Okay.
just got a notification saying that it stopped sharing, that I was
Okay.
kicked off of sharing.
All right, so he was mentioning that was like the first link on slide 148. We will double check that. And let me see what that one
Oh,
refers
James
to.
got, okay. I was trying
Oh,
to
yeah.
find mine.
Okay. Let me see here, 148. Okay, so that's the frequently asked questions. Okay. Now I know when you click on that selection, and I'm just doing it myself to confirm, you won't see what I'm doing, but oh, you're right, it does. It just says can't be found. Okay,
Oh.
we will correct that link and get it correct. Now, if you want to find the excuse me, I'm sorry, my throat's very dry. If you do want to find the frequently asked questions, you can navigate to it manually by when you're on the home page. And I'm just getting back there. Just a moment, please. NTD, so I don't misspeak. All right, so on the home page, you choose reference materials. Excuse me, and from there, you would choose, I thought it had a separate option. Let me see here. No, geez. I thought, oh, I'm sorry. It's right below that. I take that back. You don't take reference materials. Right below reference materials from the NTD homepage, choose frequently asked questions. And then you'll see general, NTD data products, and upcoming developments. You would just choose general, and then you just scroll down until you see the safety and security section. And then you'll see all the frequently asked questions for that section. But we will correct the link for the next presentation. Thank you for letting us know. NTD, new to NTD reporting file by calendar or fiscal. Safety and security data is always reported on the calendar year, not your fiscal year.
Bram had posted a link in the chat that I think is the correct version of the
Okay.
FAQ. Yeah, that opened up. So
Okay, that's
if
funny.
anybody on here wants the link, it's in the chat right now. Thank you, Bram.
Yeah, thank you, Bram. I don't see what's different, but we'll change it in the manual. Thank you for posting that. I appreciate that.
It could just be like a space or something. Minor as that, you know.
Yeah, I don't see it offhand, but it must be a dash or a space or something. So we'll get it corrected in there. Okay, can you please clarify for me that a homicide is whenever a person is killed, whether that was their intent or not? We've actually been having some new discussions about this. And as a matter of fact, I believe we're still in discussion on that. So I might have to come back. Traditionally, we have been collecting it when the person dies. Like if someone is shot and they were, intentionally shot and they die, then we collected that as a homicide. But like I said, this was brought up recently to our management, and I believe we are still discussing that. I have missed a few weeks here, so you have to apologize. I was out for a few weeks, and technically we'll be back on Monday. But I'm going to have to come back to you. And when we get this finalized and make sure that we are capturing things the way we anticipate capturing things, that we will just, because this is an important one, we'll put out some kind of a blast email or an email to, a blast email or a notice on the NTD site about this clarification. So I appreciate your asking that. Difference between an intersection and a grade crossing. Yes, this is, actually, we don't have those.
And after this one, I think we're running out of time.
Yeah,
We'll answer this
over.
one and then we can
Okay.
respond to any
Yeah.
others in emails or calls after the webinar.
Yeah,
Yes,
so thank you. If your question did not get answered, use the email addresses on your screen right now. That's correct, right? Yes,
yes, those are correct.
okay. And then you can ask your question there because we are past overtime now.
Please do. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I didn't check the time. I apologize.
Time flies.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. And please do ask your questions to us individually or to whomever you want to send the question to. We'll be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you so much, everyone.
Oh, sorry, Anne, are you still?
No, I'm done.
Okay, everyone will get an email with a link for a survey evaluation. Please just take a couple minutes and fill that out for me. I appreciate it. NTI appreciates it. And whoever is joining us for Thursday's webinar for the rail version of this, I will see you then. Otherwise, have a good one, everybody. Thanks.